The Singapore Maritime Lecture is a signature event at the annual Singapore Maritime Week, where the international maritime community gather to discuss and exchange ideas to bring the sector forward. We are so honored to have with us Mr. Ravi Menon, the Managing Director of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, or MAS, give us his keynote address.
One of the great lessons of the COVID-19 crisis is the importance of resilience. Flexible supply chains are also more resilient, where production can ramp up or down in line with changing demand and where alternative routes can be used quickly. Improved visibility and transparency on shipments can help make supply chains more flexible and resilient. Digitalization needs to be end-to-end. The maritime industry can explore linking up with customers and other stakeholders with digitally connected platforms. Workforce transformation to support business transformation. Simply hiring those with skills to fill emerging job roles and firing those who have become less relevant will not work. We must invest in the existing workforce, building deep technical skills, broad lateral skills, and digital skills for the future. That's what strategic human resource development means. The maritime industry's commitment to lower carbon emissions will be a key element in the industry's strategies in the coming years. The International Maritime Organization, the IMO, has committed to reduce annual greenhouse gas emissions by 50% and emissions intensity by 70% by 2050, compared to 2008 levels. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown the world the importance of resilience. But the maritime industry has always known this. Being able to ride the waves, to adjust course, and to seize the winds makes all the difference, not just to success, but survival itself.
The MPA-DBS MOU is the combined effort of both organizations to drive the digitalization and innovation of financial services and payments across Singapore's maritime industry. Collaborative efforts include streamlining payment transactions between maritime users and digitalizing supporting documents for financing, as well as facilitating the creation of new financial solutions. And I'd like to invite two other panelists to join us for this afternoon's discussion. First up, we have Mr. Wan Chi Fong, PSA's Regional CEO for Middle East South Asia and the Group Head of Business Development. We are also joined by Mr. Steve Saxon, a partner at McKinsey & Company. Today's topic, business definitely not as usual, how we can continue to build resilient supply chains, a resilient digital economy and workforce so that businesses can thrive in a post-COVID-19 world. Now, where, in your opinion, do you still see opportunities arising for e-commerce and the shipping industry?
We've learned that in the electronic payment space, for instance, that it's not enough to be able to send money electronically. You need to be able to send it across banks, real time, without any hassle, where systems need to be able to talk to one another. All systems or applications ride on a common infrastructure that is interoperable.
Over the last 6 months, we've seen massive transformation in this industry itself. Could you tell us then what major changes really stood out for you?
The need for greater supply chain resilience and agility calls for reformation of logistics as we know it. The demands are growing for greater integration and intelligence across multiple industry players and markets. And it has been very encouraging to see the openness to reformation spur transformation initiatives for digitization and digitalization of service offerings, not only by PSA, but by many other players in the maritime sector to increase the connectedness of the port and logistics ecosystem.
We need the ports, we need the shipping lines, we need the shippers and the truckers, and all of the ecosystem coming together and exchanging information digitally. The value at stake there is huge. Some work we did a few years ago estimated that the annual losses at around $20 billion a year just through the inefficiencies in communicating across the maritime ecosystem.
And we're looking more towards some regionalization of these supply chains. What sort of impact have you been seeing that for this regionalization of supply chains on the global economy?
You do get cases, stories about firms reconfiguring supply chains. There is a regional bias. One was related to China concentration risk, but I think the bigger factor is that the destinations or markets for final demand are now increasingly in Asia as well. So that has led to some diversification of supply chains. There are more regional ports, better connectivity now within the region, within Asia.
During this period, the supply and demand shocks that arose have certainly been disruptive, but there is a silver lining. It has reinforced the importance of the hub ports, which in general have fared better than gateway ports.
A lot of the parts, a lot of the intermediate goods are still made in China, and so you actually see sort of a fragmentation of the supply chain, and so you see more goods moving. And if you look at the growth in trade, it's actually come through regionalization of the supply chain, and a lot of that has been growth in the intermediate goods.
How do you think our maritime players can really diversify and work with these new players in their nascent stage of growth so that they can create more opportunities for themselves?
Huge potential for e-commerce in Southeast Asia. And this is going to be quite transformative in the next 5 to 10 years. This is going to create a new set of demands for warehousing, for transportation, last mile delivery, and so on, which are currently not as well developed.
When you mention e-commerce, very instinctively, people think that the goods will be moved by air. However, the pandemic has shown the bottlenecks in the single mode of transport, which is air freight. We have provided an alternative to moving e-commerce cargo from the south of China into Singapore, using Singapore as a distribution hub and onward to their final destinations.
Steve, I'd like you to weigh in on this, workforce challenges in the shipping industry.
Our industry is not necessarily the most attractive, and certainly in China, my shipping clients here are competing against internet startups for the sorts of technologists that they want. Partnerships between sort of more traditional supply chain companies and either startups or some of the large existing internet players as well. The second one is regenerate themselves internally. We've seen many shipping companies creating a separate digital business unit where with a different value proposition, in many cases a different brand, which is able to attract that talent to work in a different culture.
Could you share some best practice examples where you've seen maritime companies pivot during this pandemic?
Where we've seen the latest pivot is really around the capacity control. The container shipping lines cancelling lots of services and being disciplined in a way we've not seen this industry be disciplined before in terms of trying to match the total industry capacity to the demand.
Could you leave our audience today with one word that you would use to sum up, what the pandemic has been like for yourself?
For maritime companies, I think the willingness to disrupt early and to disrupt together. Because today, we are facing the pandemic. Who knows what the next crisis will be, but certainly this won't be the last.
We are, by our nature, maritime shipping is a physical industry. It's moving physical goods. But so much of the management of this industry has had to turn virtual and has had to turn online. And I'm continue to be incredibly impressed at how our clients and how the industry is managing to keep global supply chains running smoothly at a time when people physically are being forced to stay distant.
The creativity that people have demonstrated in coping with the very unusual sets of circumstances that the world is going through, societies everywhere going through, the resilience of the human spirit, find ways around hindrances, obstacles, and new circumstances. That's been amazing.